Hey everyone, what's up? So, I was involved recently, as I often am, in a discussion about misogyny, specifically about sexual violence, which had also, unsurprisingly, turned into a discussion about men. And so, someone asked me the following question. If women were accused of perpetuating sexism, wouldn't you be offended? Okay, so can I tell you how much I fucking hate that question? It's not because it catches me off guard or anything, I've heard it a million fucking times. I dread that question because it shows just how deep the rabbit hole of misogyny goes, and even worse really, how shallow the common understanding of gender issues really is for most people, and specifically the fact that, this is going to take a lot more of my time than I want, and I'm probably not going to get anywhere with this person because really they're honestly too far gone, but I can't resist. Alright, so one of the biggest flaws with egalitarianism, humanism, whatever you want to call your particular brand of anti-feminism, because that's really what they are, is in fact this whole toxic false idea that we as feminists somehow root our activism in some diluted sense of female innocence. Alright, so, as a proud third-wave feminist, let me take a moment to dispel that fucking illusion for you right now. Women are not in any way, shape, or form innocent, perfect little fucking angels, and anyone who would say that we are is not a feminist. As a matter of fact, this whole concept of female innocence, which is entirely myth, is just another manifestation of misogyny. It assumes that women are inherently fragile and less capable than men, and worse, it insinuates that we, and only we, as women, must be innocent in order to basically not deserve any kind of sexism or sexual violence or gender-based violence that we're put through. Basically, it just gives men another excuse that they can use anytime they feel like being violent towards women. All they have to do is prove that we're not a perfect, innocent fucking angel, which, by the way, is easy since we're fucking human beings. It's just another fucking sexist double standard for men to hold us to in order to force us to be completely obedient to doing whatever the fuck they want us to. And take some time to think about this and really look around you, because we really do as a society hold women, especially women who are feminists and activists, to this standard of you have to be just fucking perfect or else like everything is invalid and we can do whatever the fuck we want to you. And no, we don't hold men to that. We don't hold men to any standard of innocence whatsoever. Alright, so think about this for a minute. Society will rarely ever hold a man responsible for sexual violence even when he is literally the fucking perpetrator, much less hold all men responsible for actively contributing to rape culture. Meanwhile, as a woman, all I have to do is assert that we don't exist for the pleasure and enjoyment of men, and suddenly my use of that word, men, will be all the proof society needs to label me as a misandrist and turn a blind eye to all the death threats I'll inevitably receive for my failure to know my place as a woman. Basically, in the society we live in, misogyny ensures that all a woman has to do is be a feminist, which, by the way, is nothing more than wanting equality for all genders in order to deserve any violence that we receive just because we're women. Alright, so back to the subject of sexual violence, which is rightfully a touchy subject, so if this is triggering for you or anything, please walk away now. And people fucking roll their eyes at trigger warnings, but you know what? This is fucking triggering, especially for the 1 in 4 of us as women, myself included, who have to relive our personal traumas every time we discuss it, and it's just as triggering for the 1 in 33 men who also live through it. I hate having to bring up rape and sexual violence, but as a very real issue, it needs to be discussed. Alright, now brace yourselves in case you thought that you'd never hear these words come out of a feminist's mouth, because we say it all the time, but here we go. Yes, men are also victims of rape, and not only by other men. This really shouldn't be a surprise, but as a feminist, and because I'm a feminist, I not only acknowledge, but also care very deeply about male victims of sexual violence and about holding their assailants responsible regardless of gender. Sorry if I fucking sent you into shock or anything, but that's actually one of the biggest differences between us as feminists and the men's rights activists who just see male survivors as tools to justify misogyny. We see human beings who we actually care enough about to examine the reason why we as a society seem to be forgetting them all the fucking time, and it's not misandry. If it was, we wouldn't be forgetting them at all. We'd be accusing them of attention-seeking, submitting false accusations for the sake of revenge, and gold-digging. We'd be coddling the poor, innocent women who raped them. We'd ask what they were wearing. We'd see any man jogging down the road in just his gym shorts with no shirt on, call him a slut, and if he got raped, we'd say he was asking for it because of how he was dressed. But that's never how we treat male survivors. When a man is raped, we use misogynist slurs like bitch and pussy to degrade him because misogyny says that only women can be raped, and if he was raped by a woman, it's even worse. We refuse to even call it rape, specifically because toxic masculinity, which by the way is a byproduct of misogyny, says that men are bigger and stronger than weak, fragile, innocent women and therefore cannot be raped by us. And it gets even more disgusting and misogynist than that. We say he must have wanted it, because misogyny tells us that we as women are sexual objects for the enjoyment of men. So of course, according to a misogynist society, he must have fucking wanted it. This is why sexual violence is very much a feminist issue even when it happens to men. Misogyny is equally responsible for the experiences of all survivors of sexual violence, regardless of gender. Misogyny is in fact equally responsible for all gender-based issues, period. There is no such thing as misandry. Now, I'm not saying that women can't be sexist, but when we are, we're still perpetuating misogyny. Now, you may be wondering, what about women who actually specifically hate men just for being men? And I'm gonna tell you, first of all, those pretty much don't exist. That's what's called a straw feminist, and it's just a construct that society has invented to kind of try to demonize feminists. There actually are no people generally like that in most cases. The fact that we are all oppressed and we're all spoon-fed misogyny and the idea that men are superior from day one pretty much assures that we're never going to be able to actually come to a point where we would start thinking of women as superior and men as something to be shunned and downed upon and like have violence committed against them or anything like that. It's just, if you believe in the idea that a woman could be just essentially man-hating to all men for no other reason than the fact that they're men, you don't understand how the dynamics of privilege and oppression work. But sure, let's say there's like one or two women in the world who actually literally hate men for no other reason than the fact that they're men. She could be prejudiced towards men, but without the power to push that any further, which she lacks because of the fact that she's oppressed and men are privileged, she's not going to actually be able to ever really harm a man with that. Now, of course, you know, if she were in a position of power, like say being a hiring manager or something, she could totally turn down a man for a job just for being a man, but that man could very easily go literally anywhere else and get another job. It's not going to have a significant impact on him because it's not a whole society acting that way. It's like one person, if even that. Anyway, back to women perpetuating misogyny, and yes, we can and do from time to time. However, even this still isn't in any way the same as when men perpetuate misogyny. See, here's the thing. Misogyny is always harmful to women. We never benefit in any way, shape, or form from perpetuating or being on the receiving end of misogyny. On the other hand, while men can also be harmed by misogyny, in most cases, all men are benefiting from the institutionalized oppression of women. For that reason, men generally have absolutely no reason to actually try to put an end to misogyny, and every reason to do everything they can to try and justify continuing it, whether it's, you know, justifying it, erasing it, brainwashing people into thinking it doesn't exist, you name it. Now, I know a lot of people out there think that sounds really man-hating, but here's the thing. As feminists, we understand that this trait is not an inherent quality of maleness, it's a human thing. Humans are by nature selfish. If you want to say that you're not, you're fucking full of shit. I'm selfish too. We all are. We do the things that are in our own self-interest. Of course, generally, most people also do have, you know, enough decent fucking humanity in them to understand that doing the selfish thing is not always right when it harms other people, but here's the thing. Privilege is enabling in that it allows a person to see themselves as the default and assume that everyone else's experiences and difficulties must be approximately the same as their own. Basically, it blinds us to the fact that we are different and society treats us very differently based on those differences, so our experiences are going to be very different. In some cases, people are going to be oppressed and have things much fucking worse than you. Basically, it can blind you to the fact that you are benefiting from harming others. So a man choosing to maintain the power and privilege he has is not doing so because of any inherent, selfish, horrible, evil quality about maleness. He is doing so because he is a human being who experiences privilege for being male. And yes, in theory, if we somehow lived in a society where women were privileged and men were oppressed, then yes, misandry would be real and I would be to blame for it, and it would be my responsibility and not the responsibility of men in order to help eliminate it. But that's not the fucking world we live in. Society has never placed place consequences on men simply for being men. Not that that's what any of us want. No one wants that. It's just that, you know, this has never happened. Quite the opposite. Western civilization has consistently rewarded maleness while punishing the feminine. Basically, society does place consequences on women simply for being women, and for people who don't fall subject to the gender binary just for not being men, as a matter of fact. And no, feminism has not changed this yet. Even if and when we are successful at changing this, you'll never have to worry about anything like a tipping point where we suddenly start having role reversal or misandry because, one, everything is too fucking ingrained in this misogynist perspective for it to really ever get to that point, and two, if there's one thing oppression does to someone, it kills any concept of the idea of taking revenge on your oppressor. None of us would wish what we go through on our worst enemies, much less just on men for being a different gender from us. It's fucking exhausting as someone who faces oppression because people as privileged always see any kind of desire for equality as being hatred, and it's not. But back to this whole male responsibility for perpetuating misogyny. You can shout not all men as much as you want, but that won't change the fact that all women experience misogyny, not just once in our lives, but usually many, many times every single fucking day of our lives. And worse than just being an outright fucking fallacy, this whole not all men ideology is enabling. Pretty quickly, not all men becomes no men because every man is going to use that to absolve himself with 3 short words of any responsibility he has for everything he has ever done and continues to do to perpetuate the institutionalized hatred of women. I mean, apparently none of the men are like making or perpetuating any misogyny, but it's like we as women know that like the misogyny is still here every waking moment of our lives, so like who's doing it? And inevitably society decides since it's apparently not the men, it just must be us as women. We're earning it, we're asking for it. And that is probably one of the biggest reasons why society needs to fucking hold men accountable for perpetuating misogyny. Because when we don't, all of the blame is placed on the victims, women and basically anyone else who is not men, and that's unacceptable. As always, thank you so very much for watching. Feel free to leave your thoughts or any transphobic or misogynist hate speech you feel like directing at me down in the comments below. And until next time, be yourself. Hey everyone, thanks again so much for watching. If you enjoyed what you saw today, don't forget to hit that like button and share so your friends can enjoy it too. There's more where that came from, including activism and awareness videos, tutorials, you can follow my transition, and even check out some of my music. I also want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters because y'all make this channel possible. If you're not a patron yet and you want to find out how you can get awesome rewards like autographed pictures from my modeling shoots, just go to www.patreon.com/DeliaMelody to find out how you can sign up. See you next time and be yourself.